Greetings everyone, thank you very much for joining me today. This video is a long-term review of the 2017 Yamaha Tracer 700. So yes, the Yamaha Tracer 700 from 2017. I had the privilege of owning the bike for about 3 years, and I clocked about 11,000 miles on the bike in that time. So, perhaps if you're looking for a new commuter bike or something to go touring on, or something that's a bit more comfortable to take a pillion on the back, then maybe this video might be of use to you. I did a lot of different riding in that time on the bike, and it was incredibly capable. So I'll go through each kind of aspect and hopefully relay some good information back to you. In the meantime, I'm going to be kind of rolling a bit of footage for you. This is actually the last ride I took on the Tracer before letting it loose back into the wild. So my wife and I took out the bike for one last ride earlier this year in January. It's a bitter cold January day, so that's why it looks a bit barren on the roads, or the trees are a bit empty. So, but I thought I'd run some footage at the same time, and yeah, so let's get started then. So yeah, why did I buy this bike in the first place? I bought it because it was a really good all-round offering. You know, it ticked a lot of boxes in terms of being upright, have a pretty decent engine, and it had a great pillion seat for my wife to go on the back on and be quite comfortable on. So that was really good. It had a bit of wind protection as well. And yeah, it just looked like a very good all-round machine for the price. It cost about £6,000 new. I think if you're going to be going after this model as a used bike, you can probably pick them up for about £4,000, £3,000. You know, so it's I think it's a very good value for money in terms of what you get. It's obviously based on the MT-07, which is a hugely popular motorcycle. A lot of people do prefer the MT-07s, the XSR 700, to the MT-09, the XSR 900. You know, the engine isn't as brash and it isn't as unforgiving, you know, but the MT-07 is, so that 700 twin, I think it's 689cc, 270 degree twin. It's a wonderfully capable engine, loads of room to have fun on, and there's a lot of usable torque on there as well. So it's a really good engine to use all round. But yeah, £6,000, you can probably pick, you know, this model of Tracer up for about £4,000 now. In terms of engine wise, it's punching out about 75 brake horsepower, which I didn't really find lacking. I had a lot of fun with that engine, especially the torque as well. You know, you could go into most corners in third gear, fourth gear, and power out of them quite comfortably with a bit of excitement there. It never failed to put a smile on my face, put it that way. My next bike will be something a bit bigger, I think, perhaps the MT-09. Just for a bit more power, but I never really found the Tracer was lacking any usable power. In terms of carrying a pillion on the back and having a bit more weight on the bike with backpacks and things, it never struggled. It was a very capable engine to go twos up, to do a bit of touring. So I don't think you'll find any problems with this engine. As I say, a lot of people do prefer the MT-07 to the MT-09s and the XSR 700 to the XSR 900, because you haven't got, you know, relentless power. Sorry about the birds there, they're very loud at the moment. You haven't got relentless power. It's a very, you can use all of those 74, 75 horses that you get. So don't by any means think that this is a very slow machine or a weak machine to ride. It's a very capable engine in terms of, you know, touring at 70-80 miles an hour. You've got no problems whatsoever at all. In terms of everyday riding, this engine ticks a lot of boxes. Also, in terms of the engine, it's worth noting I went to a track day. I took it out round Doddington Park here in the UK, and I had absolutely no trouble having fun on that bike. There was 3 groups that day, and the intermediate group, which I wanted to be, and kind of got mashed with the advanced group. So I ended up going up against all these big Ducatis and all that. Now, as you can imagine, coming out the corners, they were just like rocket ships. And but that being said, I didn't have any problems keeping up and keeping, you know, it was a very, you know, the Tracer was very capable. It surprised me a great deal, and I never actually went into 6th gear going around Donington Park. I hit 5th gear, maxing it down through what was the Dunlop straight. So I had a whole heap of fun on that bike, and I never really found myself embarrassed in any way, shape or form. So those 75 horses, yes, it's not as many as some of those big super bikes you're going to get, but this is, you can use all of them. You can have a lot of fun with them. So very capable engine, and it will surprise you. In terms of the chassis, yeah, the chassis is very simple. I mean, there's a lot of simple things about this bike. The seat height's 835 millimeters. I'm 5'8" tall, so I had no problems kind of at least flat footing one foot and tippy toeing the other one. I couldn't really flat foot both, but I never found that a problem. Front forks, 41mm forks, they're non-adjustables, they're not even upside downies either, so very basic fork setup, but that being said, they're very reliable Yamaha forks. Going over rough bumps, if you're commuting, slow bumps and potholes, things like that, you do get a lot of kind of shudder coming through your wrists. It's not a plush ride sometimes, but it did most of the things very capable. It never really struggled. It's just not as plush as some of the more expensive bikes you're going to go for. Again, 3, 4, 5, 6 grand if you're going to buy one of these bikes. They do the job, and they never really had any problems riding at speed. Going into corners, they were very stable, very reassuring. It's just if the only complaint I would have over the forks would be slow bumps and potholes, things like that. They kind of weren't very forgiving, so you would kind of rattle around a little bit, and you probably see that in some of the videos. But in terms of more high-speed cornering, never had a problem. It was very sure-footed going into the corners, coming out of corners, heavy braking. You kind of, because it was quite a simple setup, you kind of learnt to anticipate what the bike was going to do. You kind of just adapted to it. And I never really had a need for, I never was in the garage thinking, oh, I wish I could, adjust the suspension, it's not that kind of bike. And I never really had a need to do that. So yeah, it's a simple suspension setup, but again, just like the engine, it doesn't really leave you wanting. You don't want to go in there and start tweaking things unless you're that way, if you're that technically inclined. I certainly wasn't. They did the job for me, so not a problem at all. There's a monoshock on the back which you can adjust, one of those clicker monoshocks, so if you do want to raise it up or make it a bit stiffer, if you're carrying panniers or a pillion, you can do that. So the suspension setup is very simple. Brakes, you've got twin discs on the front, 282mm disc on the front with 4-pot calipers, and they were again very decent. Like the suspension, there was a bit of a lack of initial bite, I do recall, coming into corners, but again, after a certain amount of time, you can start to predict how they're going to behave. They are so simple, it is a simple setup, but they are very reliable. They again never left me wanting more. In terms of equipment, it's all very simple and straightforward. You don't get any riding modes at all. It's just literally turn it on and off you go. There's a lot of aftermarket stuff that you can get from Yamaha, like heated grips and other panniers and various other cosmetic things that you can put on the bike. But other than that, it is a straightforward bike, really. So you're not going to be surprised by anything. In terms of ergonomics, so when I'm sat down on the bike, it was very comfortable. You sat upright a lot of the time. You can, put the balls of your feet on the pegs and have a bit more of an aggressive riding style. There's a lot of room on the seat to move around on and move back slightly as well, so you can kind of tuck down if you want to go a little bit faster, which is fine. But other than that, it is it's very much a sports touring motorcycle, so there is a lot more weight on your butt rather than on your wrists. There's hardly any weight on your wrist whatsoever, really. It's a very commanding riding position that you have, and you're quite high up, so it is a very confidence-inspiring riding position. You can kind of see a lot of what's going on, as you can see probably in the video. So yeah, it's very comfortable, very much sat on your butt. The bars are nice and level, really. When you're braking hard, the energy is going forward rather than down onto your wrists. So if you do suffer a bit from carpal tunnel, I do now and again, you're not going to have any problems with this bike. As it's a twin, there's a bit of vibration, but it's a very comfortable vibration. It's not tinny or anything like that. It doesn't kind of grate on you. You can ride for very long hours on this bike, and there's going to be, it's a noticeable vibration, but it's not annoying or it's not painful or anything like that at all. It's quite reassuring, actually. So So in terms of the riding position, the foot pegs aren't high really, they're very comfortable. You kind of got a really nice neutral riding position, and it's designed to go for, you know, to go all day. Again, it's a sports touring bike, it's designed to put long miles in. It's just a case of when your bum gets numb, when your butt gets numb, you can, you know, take off and get off and take a break. So yeah, the riding position is great. In terms of the pillion, I've mentioned my wife enjoyed the pillion seat. It's very roomy, very comfortable. There's some grab handles as well for the pillion to use. So there's a lot of, it's very accommodating for a pillion, so you're going to have no problem twos up going longer distance on this. So yeah, highly praise the pillion experience there. Foot pegs, there are rubber mounts on the foot pegs as well, which gives you another inclination as to what this bike is designed for. There's a little bit of comfort there. So these aren't metal foot pegs, these have got the rubber kind of inserts on the top from Yamaha. Again, just to make it a bit more of a plusher ride. So yeah, so in terms of ergonomics, in terms of riding position, incredibly comfortable, neutral, very wrist friendly, and very comfortable on the butt as well. There are a few comfort seat options that Yamaha do. There's a one without heating and one with heating, so you can actually go for the heated one and really, you know, step up that level of comfort. In terms of the dash, is an LCD dash, which is quite cool. It's quite, you know, it does a little animation when you start it up. It's the same one they've got on the MT-07, I'm pretty certain. You've got your amount of fuel you've got in, you've got your clock, time of day, revs and gear selector, all sorts of information, air temperature. There's lots of useful information there. It's very clear. You can see a whole heap of things. I've never really struggled to have to look, especially even in bright daylight. Never had a problem reading what was on the display. In terms of the handlebars, there's also a cross beam. You can probably see on the video there's a little crossbar, which is very useful for putting things like your sat nav, your phone. If you want to put a GoPro on there, you can do. So that little crossbar is quite useful if you want to start documenting things or carrying your phone on there. I used it quite a few times to put my phone and have Google Maps running while I was kind of riding along, so that is quite a useful addition to the experience, so that's very good. Quick cup of tea. In terms of reliability, it's reliable as hell. You know, I've never had any issues with it, never had any leaking or anything like that over the 11,000 miles that I had it. There was a little bit of perhaps rust going around the chain, and some of the kind of the metally bits had a bit of erosion. Perhaps that was my own fault for not washing the bike as much as I should have done. But surprisingly, this bike, when you buffed it up, it was really, you know, it really did look almost new. It was, in terms of quality of finish, it was really good, especially for a budget bike that it is. So the paint was great. The only points of wear that I noticed were around the foot pegs, especially the pillion foot pegs. You know, they would kind of rub away a bit of that kind of dark paint. I remember on my R6 it had the very exposed aluminium finish, which is quite durable, but with these painted Yamaha rear sets, they can wear with your boot touching them. So that was probably the only thing. So I did put some kind of carbon fiber kind of covery stuff around just to protect some of the paint. There was a bit of rust actually around the around where the rear monoshock kind of connected to the swing arm. There was a little bit of rust there, so I did kind of sand that and spray that a little bit sometimes. Again, that might have been my own fault for not kind of washing properly underneath the bike after, you know, going out in the winter months. So that's just normal kind of normal build-up erosion that you would expect on any kind of bike, really, if you don't wash it as you can keep it clean as you should do. You probably noticed on the video I did fit a Arrow exhaust system on there. There was an Arrow exhaust, so it just added a nice kind of extra note to it. I do like to have an exhaust which is a little bit louder than normal, not abrasively louder, but just enough so people can hear me going. So yeah, I used this bike pretty much for everything in the 3 years that I had it, mainly for commuting. I commuted about 30 miles a day on it, most days, a lot through the winter as well, and never had a problem with it whatsoever. It was a whole heap of fun in terms of managing traffic, zipping, doing a lot of lane splitting, hitting parts of the motorway, the freeway, and then I kind of veer off to the countryside roads and have a nice bit of a blast on the bike. It never really missed a beat at all. It was a really great, capable machine, especially for commuting to work and back. So when I was out riding, it was a very comfortable and predictable experience with the Tracer. So what I mean by that, I mean that it behaved in a very reliable way. It did the same thing. It wasn't adjustable, so I kind of learned where its weaknesses were, where its strong points were. One of the things I did love about it was the engine braking. It doesn't have a slipper clutch or anything, so when you drop it down into second gear, the bike could really stop really well, so I'd use obviously that with a combination of the front brake, and you'd really be able to stop the bike very rapidly. So the engine braking was brilliant, really. Most of the time for kind of fast sweeping corners I'd use like third gear, fourth gear, but if I really wanted to slow down and take a sharp corner, I'd drop it into second, let the engine braking bring that bike really nicely down to a steady speed, let go of the brake, and go through corners. I mentioned going out on the motorway. Yeah, going out at high speed cruising, never a problem. Obviously it's a half fairing, so it doesn't have a full fairing on the Tracer. So you do get a bit of wind blast on your thighs, which can get a bit cold, but in terms of protecting the chest and pushing the air over, especially if you're using the standard screen, it's brilliant, really. And you can even adjust it and move it up and down to get even more protection for yourself and the passenger. On my bike I actually fitted a custom screen, which was actually a screen off a Kawasaki Z1000 from 2004, I think 2005. So I got that, drilled a couple of holes in it, and I thought it looked kind of like it suited the lines of the bike, and it's even then that provided a whole heap of wind protection. So in terms of keeping the wind off the chest and off the helmet, you don't get any buffeting. It was a really smooth experience at high speed cruising, never had a problem with it. Yeah, in terms of getting home, getting off the bike, getting into the garage, I mean, it's not the lightest bike. It's 196 kilos without anything on it, so you're looking to 210 maybe, but it's quite a long bike, and there's obviously the bars, and you've also got the pillion grab handles, so you can maneuver the bike around quite well. You do get used to the weight very quickly when you're off it. In terms of fuel economy, yeah, the bike was pretty frugal, really. That twin was very forgiving, even when you're pushing it on fuel. I would usually put about 10 to 12 pounds sterling of fuel in each week, and that would get me through to the commute and the long trips home, sometimes going the long way home. I don't know what that would be in dollars, probably US dollars, but what, $15-20 maybe, I don't know. But yeah, pretty frugal in terms of fuel economy. So yeah, that twin is very forgiving on the petrol. If I was to summarise a couple of things I didn't like about it over the years, things that grated on me, perhaps the headlight. The headlight had that pirate syndrome going on, where one light would be on and the other one wouldn't be when you got your running lights on, so one light would be on, the other one wouldn't be, and you probably sometimes get some flashes off a few drivers thinking that you've got a faulty headlight. It would just make sense to balance them out and have both the headlights on, but I guess you can't really see it when you're riding the bike, can you? I changed the indicators. Obviously the Tracer came with the traditional big bulbous indicators, your turn signals, which we all love, don't we? So I changed those for the Yamaha LED ones. They cost about £100 a pair, front and rear, and I thought that was a good upgrade. They're much brighter and smaller, and they look much better. I think, yeah, apart from a bit of wear around the heel, I mentioned that on the paint, where on the rear sets, so I found myself having to touch the paint up or put a bit of masking on that just to conceal that. But other than that, really, those are kind of the only gripes I would have had about it. Again, you really do get value for money with the Tracer. You do get value. It's a very simple, straight up motorcycle, so you kind of know what to expect right from the start. And even after 3 years of riding the bike, the engine never failed to make me smile, and it never failed to have an enjoyable ride on the bike. It would do everything you wanted it to in terms of commuting, going out for a blast, keeping up with my friends who would be riding street triples, never left me embarrassed, never left me wanting more. I know obviously I've said I'm going to be upgrading to a bigger bike in the near future, but that's because I want a different style of bike. But to tick the box of being an all-rounder, the Tracer is a great option to go for, and I urge you to go out for a test ride, try out the first generation, try out the new generation, because that does look very futuristic, and they've really done a great job in updating the styling on that. I felt that the first generation Tracer, when you look side on, it had a kind of a pointy kind of nose, a bit of a beak going on, and the new one, they've really kind of made it streamlined and look quite futuristic, and really brought it up to date with the rest of the Yamaha range. So yeah, I think the Tracer is a great package if you're looking for a bike that can comfortably tour on. It's got a very, frugal, usable engine that's got plenty of go in it, and yeah, hugely capable. I think the Yamaha Tracer is a fantastic bike, especially if you're looking for your first big bike. If you're looking for something that you can go touring on, it's a really great bike to go out and have a ride on. So yeah, go out and test ride one. I hope this video has been of use to you. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please give a thumbs up. And you can also subscribe to support the channel and keep up to date with future motorcycle content. It's been Eddie Set Go. Thank you very much for your time today. Have a great day. Ride safe, drive safe. I'll see you next time.